Part 12. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 111. John Candon saw the cannibalistic look of the old lady not far away, and although he felt uncomfortable, he had to continue the performance. He smiled at Chen Huaying not far away, although the smile was uglier than crying. Chen Huaying received John Candon's response, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. He walked off the treadmill and walked towards John Candon. "Sir, where do you work?" Chen Huaying looked at John Candon with great interest. John Candon quickly put down the barbell, stood up and bowed slightly. "Madam, hello. I just came back from abroad and I don't have a job yet." Chen Huaying nodded, walked closer and looked at John Candon, especially at John Candon's well-proportioned chest and abdomen. "If you are interested, come to me and I will introduce you to a job." After that, he took out a room card from the pocket of his fitness clothes and stuffed it into John Candon's hand. John Candon took a look and saw that this was obviously a suite on the upper floor of the gym, specially prepared for VIP customers. After Chen Huaying finished speaking, she walked out of the gym, but her walking posture was a little awkward. Looking at Chen Huaying's back, John Candon's face darkened, knowing that she couldn't escape this time, so forget it, just treat it as a pig. In the VIP customer room of the gym, Chen Huaying had already taken a shower, wrapped in a bath towel, leaning on the bed, and shaking a glass of red wine in her hand. She was not afraid that John Candon would not come. In her impression, no one could resist the temptation of money. Squeak, click. The door of the room was opened by the electronic door card. As soon as John Candon walked into the room, he saw Chen Huaying lying on the bed. Chen Huaying hooked her finger at him. "Little brother, don't worry. Work is not a problem, and money is not a problem." After speaking, he took out 2 small blue pills from the bedside table and handed them to John Candon together with the red wine in his hand. John Candon cursed in his heart, this mother thinks he is not durable enough, and he still needs to feed medicine. There is no way, for the big brother's plan, he has to fight. John Candon closed his eyes, swallowed the pills, and drank red wine. The two of them tossed from the afternoon to late at night. Chen Huaying's face still had the afterglow, presumably the heat had gone down this time. John Candon also slept like a dead pig. After all, even an Iron Man couldn't stand it after 7 or 8 times. Early the next morning, the sun shone on John Candon's face through the gap in the curtains. John Candon woke up in a daze and looked at the empty room. He only found a note with a phone number on the bedside table. "What the hell, I was humming taken for free." The look of astonishment on his face did not dissipate for a long time. In the office of the chairman of the Kinman Group, Li Qing looked at the note in his hand with a serious expression. Well, he admitted that he could not hold it back and was about to laugh. According to convention, at least some money should be thrown in as a token of appreciation, right? "Brother, do you think I was hummed for free? Even a duck should throw some money." John Candon complained to Li Qing, holding his waist. "Ahem." Li Qing cleared his throat. "What you said, this phone number is much more valuable than money. Brother, how about you send someone else?" John Candon made his last effort. "I've already lost my virginity, what are you afraid of? It's just a matter of once or many times." Li Qing glanced at John Candon's waist casually. "Brother, what should we do next? How about letting Candon contact her?" Yin Xianyu pushed his glasses and asked. "You can't call directly. Calling directly is too deliberate." Li Qing shook his head. "He has so many women, of course he knows what women are thinking. If he calls Chen Huaying directly, although he can get close to her, John Candon will always be just a venting tool that can be discarded at any time. Wait a little longer. After the beauty trap, you can add a hero to save the beauty. This kind of thing can't be rushed, Just like fishing, it's better to loosen the line appropriately. 2 weeks have passed. Chen Huaying has been thinking about John Candon, but John Candon has never called him. Last time, she didn't leave John Candon's contact information, which made her regretful. It was a fixed time again, and she came to the gym to see if John Candon had come. The bodyguard had been waiting downstairs. After she changed her clothes, she planned to store her bag in her own private locker. Unexpectedly, a young man with dyed yellow hair came over, snatched her bag and rushed out. Someone, robbing. Chen Huaying shouted anxiously, because the mobile phone in her bag contained many of her secrets. John Candon rushed out of the gym and chased after the yellow-haired man. Be careful. Chen Huaying also recognized John Candon, with a little concern in her tone. John Candon blocked the yellow-haired man in the corner, and the yellow-haired man, who had nowhere to escape, took out a dagger from his waist. He slashed towards John Candon, and John Candon resisted his instinctive reaction and blocked it with his hand. Ah! Chen Huaying couldn't help but scream when she saw this scene. A cut appeared on John Candon's arm. It was really cut. Brother Dan, I'm sorry, the boss said, let's act more realistically. John Candon rolled his eyes and punched the yellow-haired man in the face. The next few punches were more or less a bit of grudge. Ignoring the yellow-haired man who was lying on the ground, John Candon picked up the bag and walked towards Chen Huaying. Here, your bag. Chen Yinghua showed the same expression on his face, you are injured. Even his voice was no longer as arrogant as usual. John Candon pretended to be indifferent and looked at his arm. It's okay, just a minor injury. Chen Huaying looked at the man in front of her who didn't care, and she suddenly felt that this man was so manly. He was more than 100 times better than the loser in her family. She thought of the last time they were together, and her face was slightly moist. Come, go upstairs, I'll bandage you first. The police will be here soon, this person. Chen Huaying shook her head, don't worry, someone will deal with it later. The two went upstairs and entered the room. After bandaging the wound hastily, they tossed around in bed for a long time. Why didn't you call me? Afterwards, Chen Huaying asked curiously. Yeah, I'm not doing it for money. Besides, although I don't have a job, I can support myself. John Candon heard this and shook his head while smoking. Chen Huaying thought for a long time, I think you are good at fighting, why don't you be my bodyguard? 2,000,001. John Candon smiled and shook his head. Daily salary. Okay, I have nothing to do anyway. After another fight, the two fell into a deep sleep. As a member of a chaebol family, Chen Huaying certainly would not trust anyone easily. What's more, John Candon showed up so timely, and his skills were not comparable to those of ordinary people. The next day, she asked someone to investigate John Candon's information, starting from his entry and exit records, his background, previous work, etc. It must be said that the power of the chaebol is powerful. In just 3 hours, John Candon's information was placed on Chen Huaying's desk. Chen Huaying picked up the materials on the table and read them carefully several times, with a gleam in her eyes. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 112. The materials on the table were complete, even Huang Mao's confession was included. From the confession, it can be seen that Huang Mao did not know John Candon. Moreover, Huang Mao was almost disabled after being beaten, which did not seem to be fake. When Chen Huaying saw John Candon's job before coming to Korea, her eyes lit up. It turned out that John Candon worked as a horse stacker in the Hejian casino, which made her very interested. This is where Li Qing's brilliance lies. It is true and false, false and true, and it is difficult to distinguish between true and false, combining the real and the fake. Chen Huaying also realized that John Candon had no job, So how could he come to such a high-end gym? Now she has let down her guard against John Candon a little. Thinking of John Candon's calf-like body, she smiled like a fangirl. She was determined to get this little wolf dog. That day, John Candon just walked out of the temporary residence prepared by Li Qing for him, and was blocked by a black hooded Mercedes. "Block your mother's way." He frowned. He was tired these days and his nutrition was a little bit out of order. In addition, fitness also requires nitrogen pumps, which makes him irritable. "What? Don't you recognize me?" The car window rolled down, and it turned out to be Chen Huaying inside. John Candon bowed slightly. "Madam, hello. Remember, my name is Chen Huaying." Chen Huaying looked up at the tall and handsome John Candon, and said with a slightly moist "Come, get in the car." John Candon only felt a dull pain in his waist, which really fulfilled the old saying 30 is like a wolf, 40 is a tiger, 50 can sit on the ground and suck the soil. Li Qing sat in the office listening to Zhang Dongxiu's report and nodded with satisfaction. It seems that Candon has successfully conquered Chen Huaying with his kidney. Zhang Dongxiu also nodded with admiration. "Brother Dan, it's really fierce. If it were me, I might have to cover the other person's face to stand up." The casino in Hejiang is well decorated, and the gambling masters are also arranged. Fishing is fun only when it is slow. John Candon has been following Chen Huaying for half a month. This old witch completely treats him as a human pile driver. And when doing it, she also makes oh your mother's head, and completely ignores whether she can bear it or not. He finally understands what it feels like to be able to vomit. "Candon, come with me to Hejiang. You should be very familiar with Hejiang." Chen Huaying did not hide the fact that he had investigated John Candon. John Candon's eyes lit up, finally see the light. A little later, Li Qing also received the news that Chen Huaying was about to go to Hejiang. "I heard that you worked as a horse stacker in a casino in Hejiang." Chen Huaying asked, pretending to be indifferent. "Well, yes, I miss my previous life." John Candon didn't know what Chen Huaying meant by this, but he still responded casually. "Which one?" "Crown Holiday." Chen Huaying smiled and suddenly said, "Okay, let's go to Sands opposite Crown Holiday." John Candon clenched his right hand unnaturally when he heard it. Sure enough, what the eldest brother said is right. An old witch like this won't believe anyone. Chen Yinghua took John Candon into Sands. What she didn't know was that Sands in Hejiang was also owned by Li Qing. It had more than 800 gambling tables and provided a variety of spinach games, including baccarat, dragon tiger, dice, roulette, color discs, etc. Entering Sands, it was filled with various roulettes and pinball machines. Of course, these were just things for ordinary tourists to play. People with status like Chen Huaying, of course, entered the VIP room and competed with wealthy people from all over the world. "Do you know why I came to Hejiang?" Chen Huaying asked, looking at the crowded hall. Without waiting for John Candon to reply, she continued to talk to herself, "Because I like the excitement of competing with the rich people from other countries in the world." There was a waiter to greet the guests as soon as they entered the door. Li Qing was very good at it. All male customers were greeted by bunny girls. Female customers were greeted by slender and fair-faced young men. "Hello, ma'am." Although Chen Huaying was visiting Sands for the first time, she had been to Galaxy and Grand Lisboa many times. She took out her credit card and handed it to the waiter to verify her assets. After the waiter verified the assets, he took the two of them into the VIP room without saying anything. There were already several people in the VIP room, including an oil tycoon wearing Arab clothes, a coal boss from the mainland, the son of a famous shipping king in Hong Kong. Basically, they all had names and surnames. Chen Huaying looked at them and felt familiar with them. Basically, they had all sat at the card table. The game played on the card table was also 5-card stud, which is the card game we call stud. Ma'am, your chips. The waiter brought the chips directly. Chen Huaying took off her coat and handed it to John Qiandan next to her, sat in an empty seat, and started today's gambling. The dealer began to deal cards. Chen Huaying's luck was unexpectedly good today. No, it should be that most people's luck was good, only the dealer was losing. Not long after, the chips in front of Chen Huaying were full, and her eyes were red with excitement. The waiter winked at John Qiandan next to him and handed him a bottle of mineral water. John Qiandan unscrewed it and handed it to Chen Huaying. Chen Huaying touched John Qiandan's hand, took a big sip of mineral water. Sensible. He took a 50,000 chip from the table and stuffed it into John Qiandan's hand. John Qiandan bit his cheek and finally resisted the urge to beat up the old witch. Of course, the water was added with ingredients. The purpose was to make Chen Huaying more crazy. The script later on was of course to let Chen Huaying win happily, but everyone in the later part, even the banker, kept losing. Only one person is winning, and Chen Huaying even wonders if she is possessed by the god of wealth. Until the end, only the banker and Chen Huaying were left on the gambling table. Li Qing opened the door and walked in, looking at the mountains of chips in front of Chen Huaying and smiling. In the dictionary of gamblers, there is no just quit in the gambler's dictionary. Since there is no one to play with Ms. Chen, I will go out and play with Ms. Chen myself. Who are you? Chen Yinghua's tone was a little vague, and it was obvious that the effect of the medicine had begun to take effect. I'm the owner of this casino. The two began a duel at the gambling table. Although Li Qing did not understand gambling, he had a plug-in, and the dealer who dealt the cards was a gambling expert he invited. The result, it goes without saying, is that betting on dogs results in nothing. The chips in front of Chen Huaying are getting smaller and smaller, her expression is getting more and more irritable, and her eyes are bloodshot. Li Qing lit a cigarette and looked at the woman who had fallen into madness. Hey, you have no chips left. Chen Huaying has lost all the chips she won. Haha, I will play with you to the end today. After saying that, he handed the credit card to the waiter next to him. Stay with me to the end. The gambling game began to get bigger and bigger, starting with 100,000, 1 million, tens of millions, and finally hundreds of millions. In general, Chen Huaying lost more than she won. It's impossible, I can't lose. At this time, she was completely crazy under the influence of drugs. Ms. Chen, your credit card is overdrawn. Li Qing deliberately provoked Chen Huaying's nerves. I bet all my Shenyang Group shares. But I want you to bet all your wealth on me, do you dare? Chen Huaying stood up, panting heavily and looking at Li Qing opposite. Li Qing glanced at her and said, okay. Then the last one, stud. After saying that, he pushed the mountain of chips in front of him. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 113. Chen Huaying sat slumped on the chair and looked at the cards in front of her. Lost, all lost. Ms. Chen, please sign the share transfer contract. Li Qing handed the contract that had been prepared to Chen Huaying. No, I won't sign. I'll go back and raise money for you. I'll definitely come back. I'll mortgage my boyfriend here. Chen Huaying pulled John Qiandan and said. His words made John Qiandan unable to react for a moment, and even Li Qing laughed angrily at her after hearing the translation. She waved her hand and said that she had to sign the contract whether she signed it or not. The entire process was videotaped and she couldn't deny it. Several young men with big muscles and round waists asked her to sign the contract. Chen Huaying walked out of the Sands casino in despair. She didn't even care about John Qiandan's life or death. Qian Dan, They say that a couple's kindness will last 100 days. Look at how heartless she is, Zhang Dongzio joked from the side. Roll. Li Qing looked at Zhang Qiandan with a smile. Thank you for your hard work during this period. 10 Japanese actresses have already been arranged for you. When Zhang Qiandan heard this, he said with a sad face, brother, I'll wait first. You don't know that I took medicine to get better during this period. Now when I think about it, my waist hurts. Haha. It seems that after 8 times in one night, Zhang Qiandan really needs a rest. Chen Huaying returned to South Korea in embarrassment and nestled on the sofa in her office. No, I can't give away my equity to others easily. She knew that Hejiang Casino would not be able to accept Shenyang Circulation's equity in the short term, so she had to make time to transfer the equity before the other party came. The only person she thinks of now is her ambitious nephew Chen Chenjun. In the office of Shenyang Heavy Industries, Chen Chenjun is handling company affairs. Shenyang Heavy Industry has many subsidiaries, including Shenyang Machinery and Shenyang Chemical, Shenyang Shipping, Shenyang Motor, etc. Although the profit is small, the affairs are relatively complicated. Sung Jun. Chen Chenjun raised his head when he heard this. Aunt. My aunt, like my second uncle, is not a fuel-efficient person. She only wants to eat more and get more. If my grandfather hadn't been inclined to have eldest sons and grandchildren, a lot of that part of me would have been taken away from me. Chen Jun, as the eldest grandson of the Chen family, do you want to own more equity? Chen Chenjun was not a fool, and his eyes narrowed. Auntie, you didn't lose to Shenyang department store again, did you? He knew this was not the first time for this aunt. An embarrassed look flashed across Chen Huaying's face. It's Shenyang Lu. What? Chen Chenjun stood up in shock and yelled. Shenyang Circulation is one of the main businesses of Shenyang Group. Once this part is gone, Shenyang Group will be like a cripple who has lost his legs. I don't want to either, but... Chen Huaying looked innocent. Although Chen Chenjun was shocked, he felt a burst of joy in his heart. This was a great opportunity to seize Shenyang Circulation. As long as he is involved in the two major sectors of heavy industry and circulation, his position as heir will be secure. Trying to calm down, Auntie, what do you mean? What I mean is that if you acquire my equity first, it will be better than outsiders. But I also have conditions. It must be acquired at market price, and I want $100 million in cash. Cash is much safer than transfer. For example, in the gambling industry in Hejiang, you can check the money in your own account. What should you do if the other party comes to ask for the account? Then give me some shares in heavy industry. The latter sentence is her purpose. The shares can be sold to the eldest brother and the second brother, but they will never give themselves shares. Only this nephew, in order to break through the constraints of his elder brother, could agree to his conditions. After all, the prince has been sitting for a long time, and no one wants to be the emperor. Chen Chenjun is not a fool. Of course he knows what his aunt has planned, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There will be no such store after this village. Even if she doesn't agree, Chen Huaying will find her father or second uncle, and then she won't even be able to drink soup. After pondering for a long time, he said, okay, but the specific shares still need to be discussed. The aunt and nephew reached an agreement after intense bargaining. But neither of them thought about how to deal with the New World Group that was about to collect accounts. Maybe they didn't take them seriously at all. After all, this was South Korea. A week later, the legal department of New World Group came to South Korea and found Chen Huaying. Chen Huaying refused to perform the share transfer on the grounds that she did not have any circulating shares in Shenyang. Mr. Li, Chen Huaying has transferred the shares to Chen Chenjun, and the date is earlier than ours. If we go through legal procedures, I'm afraid. The person in charge of the legal department shook his head. After Li Qing listened to the report from the head of the legal department, he smiled. No one trained by the Chable can save fuel. Well, okay, you go down first. After the people from the legal department left, John Candon couldn't wait to say, brother, our plan failed. Am I being prostituted for nothing? He was a little unwilling to exchange his energy and strength for such a result. Where are you? I'm so anxious that I can't eat hot tofu. Looking at the younger brothers staring at him, Li Qing smiled slightly. Xianyu, you may be exposed this time, be prepared. Yin Xianyu nodded after hearing this. Zikan, go tangle with some younger brothers and go to Shenyang department store to cause trouble, especially spread the video of Chen Huaying in the casino. Dongxiu, you go to Xiangjiang and follow Crow to the Netherlands and bring back a gangster who participated in the assassination of Xianyu. Qian Dan, you go back to Chen Huaying and tell her what to do. Everyone responded, only John Candon looked sad. Li Qing stood up and patted John Candon's shoulder. Ahem, I'm sorry, Don is right in front of you. Except for him, everyone walked out with their lips curled up, fearing that they would not be able to hold back their laughter. After Li Qing finished arranging the task, he also walked out. He and Mao Xianmin were going to Mao's house again to meet Mao Xianmin's father, the old fox, Mao Shunyao. Mao's mansion and study room. Li Qing looked at the old fox Mao Shunyao opposite. Uncle, I have only one thing to do here this time, and that is to ask you to collect evidence of tax evasion by Shenyang heavy industry. And no one is allowed to suppress Shenyang's negative news. He knew that as the most well-informed leader of the Seoul Daily, he must have his own investigation channels. Drink tea. Mao Shunyao did not answer immediately, but asked Li Qing to drink tea. What can I get? When Li Qing heard this, he paused with the teacup in his hand. Haha, your illegitimate son can get 1% of the shares of Shenyang heavy industry, which is enough for him to live a lifetime of food and clothing. And I promise you, as long as he is honest, I will keep him safe for the rest of his life. Li Qing has grasped Mao Shunyao's weakness, his illegitimate son. Mao Shunyao also knew that his illegitimate son could not hide for long. If he was discovered, there was no guarantee that Mao Yongzi would not take extreme measures. Don't underestimate the heirlooms of the Chable family. Sometimes they are even more exciting than the royal heirlooms in history. Mao Shunyao was silent for a long time and got himself a cup of tea. Looking at Li Qing opposite, he picked up the teacup and clinked it with him. Deal. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 114. The tasks assigned by Li Qing were successfully executed within a week. Chen Huaying was so distressed by the casino video incident that she didn't even think of communicating with John Candon. Here you go, take it, don't come to me during this time. Chen Huaying took out a wad of US$ and threw it on John Candon's chest, then put on a bathrobe and walked into the bathroom. John Candon looked at the wad of dollar bills in his hand and smiled. His efforts during this period were not fruitless. He discovered that Chen Huaying would go to a warehouse owned by Shenyang Circulation from time to time. After putting on his clothes, John Candon walked out of the room with a contemptuous glance in the direction of the bathroom. Brother, I found that Chen Huaying has been going to a warehouse below Shenyang during this period. I feel like there is something wrong. After Li Qing heard John Candon's report, he took his younger brother to the warehouse that night. This is it. John Candon pointed to the warehouse in front. Chen Huaying wouldn't let him get out of the car every time he came. She went in alone, so there must be something fishy. Li Qing and others walked in slowly, and to their surprise there was no one guarding inside. Li Zikan walked to the wall and knocked. Brother, there is still a room inside. Then he said with an ugly face, Brother, the electronic combination lock and the alloy door are as good as those in banks, and they can't be blown open. I had no choice but to call in the professional locksmiths from Kinman Group. Half an hour later, everyone opened the heavy alloy door. The scene inside shocked Lizakin and others who had never seen the world. Stacks of US dollars were wrapped in plastic wrap and stacked neatly on the table. It looked like they were no less than 100 million. Move away, Li Qing chuckled, what an unexpected gain. Zhang Qiandan and Zhang Dongzhou looked at Lizakin and others with disdain. If you don't have any knowledge, it's just 100 million US dollars. I've seen too much. For a long time, Li Qing looked at the empty warehouse and nodded with satisfaction. He turned to Zhang Qiandan and said, "Let Xiao Ma get 100 million counterfeit bills." After saying that, he took the people and walked out. Zhang Qiandan and Zhang Dongzhou looked at each other. "Boss, you are awesome." In the car, Li Qing said to Zhang Qiandan, "Qiandan, when Xiaoma's counterfeit money arrives, you can take some of it and go directly to the police station to call the police. Zikan, ask your little brother to take some counterfeit US dollars and scatter them." Zhang Qiandan said coquettishly, "Boss, then my being a duck will be exposed." "Well, so after this incident, you don't need to come to South Korea. Don't worry, I'll have someone mosaic your face on the news." Zhang Qiandan had a dark look on his face. "Is this a matter of mosaic or not?" "Brother, oh ho, I'm coming." Crow swaggered open the door of Li Qing's office. Li Qing was kissing Mao Xianmin passionately. Don't you know how to knock on the door?" Li Qing threw the President Li Qing sign placed in front of the table at the Crow. Crow turned around and walked out of the door, closing the door respectfully. Bang bang bang. There was a knock on the door. "Brother, I'm here, are you in there?" Li Qing sat on the chair with the black hair. "Come in. This is your sister-in-law." Crow adjusted his suit and said, "Sister-in-law." Mao Xianmin smiled and nodded, "I'm leaving first. See you in the evening." When Mao Xianmin walked out of the room, Crow sat down on the chair. "Why are you here? Are you healed?" Crow stood up and patted his butt. "Brother, it's completely fine. Do you want to see it?" Li Qing covered his forehead helplessly. "Brother, I don't accept it. Why don't you let me go if you have such a good thing, just because Qiandan understands Korean?" "No, because he outlasts you." Li Qing choked on his words and almost lost his breath. "I can take medicine, so can I?" Crow muttered quietly. "Okay, how about the thing I asked you to do?" Li Qing threw a cigarette to Crow. "No problem, the foreigner has been invited." Hearing this, Li Qing smiled slightly and nodded. 2 days later, Li Qing obtained evidence from Mao Shunyao about tax evasion by Shenyang Heavy Industry. At this time, the Seoul Police Agency is scratching its head over an increasing number of counterfeit banknote cases. Because most people have never seen real US dollars, and the manufacturing level of counterfeit banknotes in the New World is already quite high, it is difficult for ordinary people to distinguish authenticity. "Sir, where did you get your counterfeit banknotes? Why are there so many counterfeit banknotes?" The young police officer looked at the reporter in front of him. Zhang Qiandan sat lazily on the chair. "My girlfriend gave it to me." "Who is your girlfriend?" "Chen Huaying." "Chen Huaying of Shenyang Group." The policemen around him stood up instantly and looked at him in surprise. This matter involves the chaebol, and the young policeman also finds it troublesome. When Chief Jin of the National Police Agency heard this, he also said, "Axi." Originally, he came to the position because of Director Gao's sudden death in the line of duty. He didn't expect to encounter such trouble. He had no choice but to report to the Seoul Prosecutor General in person. The Prosecutor General already has materials on tax evasion and tax evasion of Shenyang Heavy Industry Group. Here Director Jin's report. "Shenyang Group? It's Shenyang Group again," the Prosecutor General muttered in a low voice. "Yes, there have been a lot of things going on with Shenyang Group recently, not only involving the counterfeit banknote case, but also the video of Chen Huaying in the casino. Reported by Director Kim. The prosecutor general pondered for a moment, initiate an investigation into Chen Huaying, starting with the counterfeit banknote case. The materials in the chief prosecutor's hand were handed down by the top leaders, which is why he dared to investigate the direct relatives of the chaebol. It seems that some people in the top leaders are dissatisfied with Shenyang Group. Director Jin nodded after hearing this, walked out, and began to arrange the investigation of Chen Huaying. One day later, the warehouse where Chen Huaying hid the cash. "Open it," Director Jin said in a deep voice. The technicians began to crack the electronic secret lock. The alloy door was opened soon. Everyone looked at the neatly stacked US dollars in the warehouse in shock. There were waterproof measures on it, which obviously had just been stored recently. Director Jin had a gloomy face, picked up a roll of counterfeit money, and took out a US dollar to look at it carefully. He took a breath of cold air. Fake. If it is true, not to mention myself, the chief prosecutor will also suffer. But this is fake. It is a huge achievement, 100 million counterfeit money case. If he could get it this time, he would be one step closer to retirement. Thinking of this, he felt a surge of heat in his heart. Take them all away. The latest news is that Chen Huaying of Shenyang Group was taken away by the Seoul Police Department for investigation. It is said that he was involved in a counterfeit banknote case. For details, please see the report below. Seoul News reports for you that the third-generation heir of Shenyang Group is suspected of tax evasion and has been taken away by the Seoul Police Department for investigation. For details. News about Shenyang Group were reprinted one after another, and the people of South Korea knew that Shenyang Group was involved in tax evasion and counterfeit banknote cases. For a time, people's good impression of Shenyang Group dropped to zero, and Shenyang Group's shares plummeted. Who can tell me what is going on? In the office of the chairman of Shenyang Group, a man in his 50s shouted angrily. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 115. Office of the President of Shenyang Group. Why did this happen? Chen Yongji said angrily and helplessly. Several members of the Chen family looked at each other in shock. They had no idea about the transaction between Chen Chenjun and Chen Huaying. Brother, now is not the time to hold people accountable. We must suppress the news quickly, otherwise. Chen Dongji shook his head. In fact, he was already happy. The boss finally had a problem. President, Minister Chen's Shenyang Heavy Industry has insufficient cash flow, and the stock price of Shenyang Heavy Industry has fallen to the bottom. I'm afraid. Chen Yongji's secretary reported. What are you afraid of? Chen Yongji asked gloomily. The capital chain is broken. As the president of the group, Chen Yongji certainly knows what it means when the capital chain is broken. In fact, Chen Yongji had already been angry with the Korean government before the incident broke out, and he also knew that other chaebols should be involved. It is impossible to rescue Chen Chenjun and Chen Huaying without any loss this time. But his indecisive character made him unable to make up his mind. Can you transfer a batch of funds from other subsidiaries? The secretary shook his head when he heard this. Due to involvement in tax evasion, Heavy Industries account has been frozen. Sell Shenyang Circulation and Shenyang Heavy Industries. The sudden appearance of an old female voice stunned everyone in the Chen family. Mother. Apparently this woman is Li Baiyu, the former hostess of Shenyang Group. Things have reached this point, why are you still hesitating? As expected of the former hostess of Shenyang Group, she was extremely decisive in her work. Now that Shenyang Heavy Industries is in deficit, it is a fact that Chen Chenjun has evaded taxes, and Chen Chenjun still holds the circulating shares of Shenyang. Chen Huaying has been implicated in the counterfeit banknote case, and under pressure from the United States, Senior officials have planned to deal with the matter strictly. If the relationship is not cleared up at this time, the entire Shenyang group may collapse under the pressure of other chaebols and the Korean government. Now Shenyang is the fat on the chopping board, and everyone is eyeing him. Bang! The office door was pushed open forcefully. The president and his group. Before he could finish his words, Crow, who was wearing a leather jacket, pulled away the secretary who was about to speak. Dongziu, please translate for me. Crow couldn't speak Korean, so he specifically asked Zhang Dongziu to accompany him. Gentlemen and ladies, I am Crow from Hejiang New World Group. Zhang Dongziu glanced at Crow speechlessly. Are you being a host? Grass. Crow looked at Zhang Dongziu in confusion, who didn't translate for a long time. Axi Zhang Dongziu translated helplessly. Crow nodded with satisfaction. At this time, I would like to tell you a common saying, repaying debts is a matter of course. Zhang Dongziu opened his mouth and murmured for a long time, maid, I don't know how. If you don't speak human words, I'm leaving. Ahem, this is the contract. Let them return the shares or bear the consequences. Crow slapped the share contract on the table. Chen Yongji picked up the Korean contract, read the content and his sister's signature, and almost became so angry that he vomited blood. If you don't fulfill the contract today, you won't be able to leave this room. After the Crow said, he took out the gun and slapped it on the table. The Chen family all looked at the gun on the table in horror. They had never seen such an arrogant gangster. In their impression, South Korean gangsters are dogs who help them wipe their butts, and they will do anything for money. I will give you the money, but not the shares, Chen Yongji said loudly. You see clearly, when our eldest brother and your sister were betting against each other, they were betting on the casino in Hejiang. My shares are not money. Crow had a sinister expression on his face. He picked up the gun and shot the secretary in the leg. I can't guarantee whether the next shot will hit you in the head. The Chen family looked at the secretary who was slumped on the ground and wailing, and their faces turned pale for a moment. Give it to them. Li Biu came out to take charge of the overall situation. Mother. Li Biu waved her hand. She knew that these people were all desperados. If they didn't agree today, they might be really in danger. What's more, Shenyang circulation is now under investigation by the prosecutor's office because Chen Huaying, so it's better to get rid of this mess. After listening to Zhang Dongziu's translation, Wu Yao shook his head and said, Old lady, you are a sensible person. After saying that, Crow asked his younger brothers to reveal the bombs in their arms. When the Chen family saw the bomb, they shrank back unconsciously. Seeing the expressions of the Chen family, Wu Wu smiled disdainfully and led his younger brother out of the door. Li Qing was sitting in his chair with his eyes closed and concentrating. He had been overworked these past few days. Brother, it's done. He heard the Crow and opened his eyes. Well, that's it. He is not afraid that the other party will not fulfill his promise, and he will not let the Chen family off so easily next time. After all, as long as the mind does not slip, there are always more solutions than criminal law. Zhang Dongziu also walked in. Brother, let someone else translate for Crow next time. I don't understand some idioms. He scratched his head in embarrassment. What are you doing again? Li Qing glared at the Crow. Crow smiled coquettishly and said, it's not like Dahu just learned some new words, so I can use them just in time. Brother, listen, from tomorrow onwards, be a sexually happy person. You are so happy, get out of here, Li Qing yelled at the Crow. Get out of here, the Crow muttered softly. Poof, the Crow stood up and farted accidentally. The worst thing was that the leather pants he wore today had a big bulge behind his buttocks, which twisted and turned as he walked. When Zhang Dongziu saw it, he was 8 feet away from him in an instant. You. Li Qing rubbed his stinging temples. He felt that he would be pissed off by the Crow sooner or later. Brother, Shenyang Heavy Industries stock has fallen to the bottom. Li Zikan walked in excitedly. Just as he met the crow who was walking out, a foul smell of feces came. Did this guy poop in his pants? Okay, Zikan, start acquiring Shenyang Heavy Industry in the name of Kinmen Group. Li Qing clapped his hands happily. By the way, Dongzhou sent the New World legal team to start the delivery of Shenyang circulation. Zhang Dongzhou nodded and walked out with Li Zikan at the same time. Shenyang Group decided to completely abandon Shenyang Heavy Industry and Shenyang circulation and completely separate these two parts. With a series of digging meat policies of Shenyang Group, the downward trend of Shenyang Group stock was quickly stabilized. Even through a series of recent public welfare activities, Shenyang Group stock has risen. At this time, Chen Qinjun in the detention room was not so lucky. Chen Yongji, who was sitting opposite, had just beaten him up. I will find a relationship to let you out. After you come out, you can be your rich second generation with peace of mind. After Chen Yongji said this, he left. Chen Qinjun knew that he was finished. In the future, he would only become a tool for the family to reproduce, and he would no longer have any say. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 116. Li Qing has completely taken over Shenyang Heavy Industry through Kinmen Group, especially Shenyang Shipping, which has greatly helped his business. Shenyang circulation was also handed over smoothly. The Chen family seemed to be frightened and did not dare to cause trouble in the middle. As for Chen Huaying, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison for the counterfeit banknote case with solid evidence. Hi Ernmin, I want to hand over New World distribution to you. Li Qing had thought about it before. Mao Xianmin came from a plutocratic background and was familiar with the upper-class society. When he and Mao Xianmin have a blood heir in the future, his descendants will also have an inheritance. As for Shenyang Heavy Industries becoming Kinmen Heavy Industries, Li Qing handed over the responsibility to Yin Xianyu. He had been in charge of this area before and was able to do it easily. Li Qing's basic base in South Korea has been laid out, and he is now considered half a Korean chaebol. On a rainy night, Chen Qinjun was drinking wine in a penthouse mansion. Now he is completely reduced to an abandoned son, and his father Chen Yongji no longer has hope for him. Instead, he has been looking for a marriage partner for him, eager to give birth to the fourth generation of Shenyang Group. Mao Xianmin, whom he longed for, turned out to be the head of the former Shenyang circulation, New World circulation, which made him very depressed. Who are you? Chen Qinjun found that there were many more people in his room, wearing black suits and looking like they were not easy to mess with. Mr. Chen, you won't forget me, will you? As soon as Li Qing spoke, the younger brothers all made way out of the way and bowed slightly to show respect. After Chen Qinjun listened to Zhang Dongzhou's translation, he opened his eyes in a drunken state to see clearly the person in front of him. It's you. Chen Qinjun finally saw Li Qing's appearance clearly, and recalled the fear of being dominated by him that night. What, you want to use these people to deal with me? I am the heir to Shenyang Group. Chen Qinjun was drunk and said in a sullen tone. When Li Qing heard this, he smiled disdainfully and said, Dongxiu, let him die and understand. Watching Zhang Dongzhou tell Chen Qinjun everything, watching his expression change from stunned, to shocked, to resentful. Zhang Dongzhou took a hammer directly from his younger brother and smashed all his joints amidst Chen Qinjun's wails. Chaebol? Ha ha. Li Qing looked at Chen Qinjun who was squirming on the ground and took a deep drag on his cigarette. He stood up and looked at the rainy scene outside the window. It's such a good weather to close your eyes. Remember to take photos of your highlights in the next life. The younger brothers didn't give Chen Qinjun a chance to beg for mercy. They let out a miserable howl, mixed with the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground. Li Qing looked at Chen Qinjun, who had become a corpse downstairs, and said, "Let's go." Zhang Dongzhou took out a suicide note from his pocket. This was what Li Qing had told him a long time ago. The handwriting was imitated by Chen Qinjun. Of course, the surveillance video of the group was destroyed by technical means after Li Qing and others left. Then Li Qing and others came to the Mao family mansion, which was what Li Qing must do before leaving Korea. Mao Shunyeo, an old fox, still needs to be beaten. As soon as he entered the door, he saw Mao Shunyeo pretending to read the newspaper. "Uncle, you are so cheerful. You are still reading the morning paper so late." Mao Shunyeo had just known that Li Qing was coming, and he deliberately made tea and waited for him. "Haha, my nephew is so awesome." He forcefully took the piece of fat from Shenyang's mouth. Li Qing just rolled his eyes when he heard the word nephew. "There is no other way. I have to have some industry in Korea. I have already taken care of the things I promised my uncle. Just ask him to sign." After saying that, he handed over the share contract in his hand. The he Li Qing mentioned was of course Mao Shunyeo's illegitimate son. But the uglification comes first. He will get a lot of points for correcting him. If he dares to reach out randomly, I will chop off his claws. Li Qing said pitifully with his eyes fixed on Mao Shunyeo opposite him. These words were obviously a warning to the illegitimate son, but they were actually meant for Mao Shunyeo to hear. If Mao Shunyeo dared to use his relationship with Mao Xianmin to influence the circulation of the New World, Li Qing would naturally not be polite to him. "Don't worry, he's not that bold yet." Mao Shunyeo laughed dryly, understanding what Li Qingqian meant. "Then uncle, take a good rest. I'm leaving." Li Qing stood up and smiled slightly. Mao Shunyeo watched Li Qing's back disappear from the door, his eyes flickering, and he didn't know what he was thinking. "Master, I just received the news that Chen Qinjun, the heir to Shenyang Group, committed suicide by jumping off the building." Mao Shunyeo's pupils shrank, and a look of horror flashed across his face. He felt that Li Qing must have something to do with Chen Qinjun's death. The timing was too good. Forget it, let's ensure his safety for now. He planned to transfer the illegitimate child's living address immediately, as it was no longer safe there. Li Qing sat in the car returning to the villa, thinking about what he had gained during his time in Korea. First, he accepted Ding Qing's commission to take down the Kinmen group, and then bit off 2 pieces of fat from Shenyang's body. If Shenyang hadn't been too big and his power in South Korea wasn't enough to swallow him up, he wouldn't have let Shenyang go so easily. When they arrived at the villa, Mao Xianmin was busy with dinner. Li Qing was speechless as he looked at the kimchi on the table. "Xianmin, stop working so hard. I only need a few pickles to survive." Although he has been in South Korea for more than half a year, Li Qing is still not used to Korean food. In Xianjiang, pickles are only served as a side dish and eaten with porridge. Unexpectedly, in Korea, they are eaten as the main course. "You have to leave. I'll cook for you next time. I don't know when it will be." Li Qing had told Mao Xianmin about his return to Hong Kong a long time ago. Mao Xianmin was a little sad, because everyone wanted their significant other to be with them all day. She knew that there were still many things waiting for Li Qing to deal with in Hong Kong. Mao Xianmin was also busy taking over New World circulation these days, and had never cooked for Li Qing. Looking at Mao Xianmin, who was reluctant to leave, Li Qing chuckled, "It won't take a few hours to fly, I'll come to see you later." Mao Xianmin nodded in understanding. "Don't worry about New World circulation, I will manage it well." After the two finished their meal, they started a big battle. Li Qing unlocked several postures at the same time, but Mao Xianmin was defeated in the end. After all, 5 times the physique is not a cover. The next day, Li Qing brought Crow, Zhang Dongzhou, Yanbian F3 and others to the airport in Seoul. Now Seoul News reports for you. It is reported that Chen Chinjun, the heir of Shenyang Group, committed suicide by jumping off a building, and his aunt Chen Huaying also hanged herself in prison. Please see the following report for details. Li Qing watched the news released on the airport TV, and Zhang Dongzia whispered to him. "Let's go," Li Qing smiled. "Take care, brother." Li Qing boarded the plane back to Hong Kong with the farewells of Li Zikan, Yin Xianyu and other younger brothers. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 117. At the Hong Kong International Airport, Li Qing and his group got off the plane. After waiting for about 10 minutes, Dahu and Ergo ran over breathlessly. What happened? Looking at the two sweaty men, Li Qing asked curiously. Brother, Lan Zilan and Guo Lanbin had a fight in our bath center, and I was late to deal with the matter. Dahu wiped the fine beads of sweat on his head and said. Lan Zilan? Guo Lanbin? What's going on? Crow's eyes lit up, and he asked before Li Qing asked. Hey, they often compete with each other to see who has the bigger penis when taking a bath, and they get angry while talking. Li Qing rolled his eyes speechlessly. How did you solve it? Ergo came over in time. My brother came up with the idea to find a girl for each of them to see who can last longer. Who pays for the girl? My brother. Li Qing looked at Crouching Dragon and Phoenix in silence, and he was considering whether to sell them to East Africa for mining. You two are stupid. Crow stood up and scolded the two. Li Qing nodded with relief. He still had a younger brother who knew about financial management. Why don't you find one for them? After that, let the girl judge whose dick is bigger. Li Qing kicked Crow on the butt without saying a word. Stop talking, go home quickly. After that, he got into the car first with a black face. Crow scratched his head aggrievedly. Damn, it's all your fault. Look, big brother is angry. Dahu and Ergo looked at each other, looked at Crow with contempt, and followed. Hey, hey. What's that look in your eyes? Be careful or I'll beat you up. Li Qing finally relaxed after returning to the villa. Looking at the bowl of ginseng soup brought by Gang Sheng, Li Qing smiled, hugged Gang Sheng, and smelled her hair. Don't, the soup will spill. Gang Sheng said in a low voice, but still rubbed Li Qing's cheek with his head like a kitten. Is everything okay in Hong Kong recently? Well, nothing serious, but, mobile phones are completely out of stock. Since Zhang Qiandan went to Korea, Gang Sheng has been paying attention to this business. Li Qing had expected this. After all, Shenyang would never supply Li Qing no matter how stupid it was. Especially after Mao Xianmin took over New World Circulation, the Chen family of Shenyang Group already knew that Li Qing was behind Mao Xianmin. Immediately stopped the supply of mobile phones. There's no rush for this. Without him, the butcher Chen, we can't eat hairy pigs. For the problem of mobile phone supply, he had already planned it. After a while, he planned to send someone to Taiwan Power to contact Taiwan Province. It just so happened that he had a cooperation with Tiandao League, and he believed that it would not be a problem to get Taipower's supply. Hugging the boneless Gang Sheng, Li Qing's big hands began to play tricks. Well, don't be here. Li Qing also followed suit, picked her up and walked towards the bedroom. The two of them were like newlyweds after a long separation, and they kept tossing until very late. The next day, Li Qing sat in the office, looking at the 7 brothers and sisters of Tian Yangsheng sitting in a row opposite. During this period, he was busy with Korean affairs and had no time to pay attention to them. Brother Cheng. Tian Yangsheng was still a little uncomfortable with suddenly calling Li Qing big brother. Well, how are you recently? Have you recovered from your injuries? Li Qing asked with concern. After all, 3 of them were seriously injured, and the doctor took a lot of effort to pull them back from the brink of death. Thank you for your kindness, Brother Ching, we will follow your lead in the future. When it comes to injuries, Tian Yangshan and his friends flashed a touch of emotion in their eyes. The 7 brothers and sisters have been growing up in an orphanage. They warm each other up, and no outsider can help them so wholeheartedly. Li Qing smiled and waved his hand, watching the loyalty value entries above the brothers and sisters rise a little. Brother Qing, we want revenge. Tian Yangshan pondered for a long time, and still made up his mind to say to Li Qing. Li Qing had expected this. After all, being betrayed, being robbed by the gangsters, and not getting a penny of $100 million, no one would be happy. Not to mention these gangsters who have never suffered much. Revenge? Do you know who the enemy is? Tian Yangshan shook his head when he heard this. I only know the contact person, but we have not been able to contact him in the past few months. During this period, Tian Yangshan and his friends were looking for information everywhere, but they had no clue about the person behind the scenes. Of course Li Qing knew who was behind the scenes. This person was Superintendent Zhang Wenyao of the Special Operations Group. It is easy to kill a superintendent, but the sequelae are great. Even if the Hong Kong government is a waste, it will not let a superintendent die unclearly. Brother Qing, we have found the arms supplier during this period, a guy called Tiger Boy. Tian Yangshan thought for a while and said. Well, he is just a small fry, there is no point in finding him. You go to Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital to find He Yongqiang, he is the driver of the money transporter. Tian Yangshan looked at each other in surprise for 7 days, he did not expect that brother Li Qing had always been concerned about him and others. When he was in Korea, he had already found out the insider's information. Li Qing did not explain, let them continue to misunderstand. After all, he was also very happy to see the loyalty value slowly climbing. Tian Yangshan and his friends walked out of the room. Li Qing knocked his head and thought, how to get the $100 million without anyone noticing. Zhang Wenyao put the money in the police station. This move was indeed clever. After all, the light is dark, no one would have thought that the $100 million of the stolen money transporter would be under their noses. In the medium-sized conference room of the police station, a group of senior police officers were also discussing the robbery of the armored truck by Tian Yangshan and others. What do you do for a living? It's been more than half a year since the armored truck case happened, and you don't have any clues. The senior superintendent in white uniform banged on the table. Director, this group of gangsters are orphans and received special training in the Soviet Union. They have committed many major cases in Thailand in the past 2 years. Interpol has been arresting them. The strange thing is that they haven't appeared in the past 6 months, and there has been no news about them. Luo Paiquan explained. I don't care, all the $100 million belongs to the Bank of America. Now the British government is under great pressure. Do you know? Superintendent Luo Paiquan is solely responsible for this matter. Is there anyone who can help? Everyone here lowered their heads and said nothing, and no one dared to make the first move. Zhang Wenyao gritted his teeth and felt that this matter could not be left in the hands of others. He knew that his old friend Luo Paiquan was too serious and there was no guarantee that he would not investigate and deal with anything. Let me assist Superintendent Luo Paiquan. This group of gangsters committed crimes in my police district more than half a year ago. Zhang Wenyao thought for a while and said. Bai Uniform looked at the others, okay, let Zhang Wenyao assist Luo Paiquan in investigating the case. I'm relieved that you 2 brothers can work together. Zhang Wenyao and Luo Paiquan walked downstairs. I heard that you have bought a lot of stocks recently, be careful of losing them all, Luo Paiquan joked. Not much, just for fun. Zhang Wenyao had an unnatural expression on his face. His eyes glanced at his private car parked at the police station for a long time. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 118. Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital, Tianyangsheng brought his brothers to the second floor. I had just inquired that He Yongqiang was watching TV on the second floor. Looking at He Yongqiang with a dull look in his eyes, Tianyangsheng smiled contemptuously and walked to his side. Do you know that I have received professional training in the Soviet Union? I can tell whether you are really sick at a glance. Don't think that we can't do anything to you if you pretend to be sick. You still have a wife and children. When He Yongqiang heard about his wife and children, his eyes moved slightly, revealing a flaw, which was noticed by the sharp Tianyangsheng. Tianyangsheng raised his eyebrows. You continue to pretend. My brother has already gone to catch your wife and children. After saying that, he left the room without waiting for He Yongqiang's reaction. Don't hurt my wife, I'll go with you. He Yongqiang finally couldn't pretend anymore and ran out of the room. Tianyangsheng brought He Yongqiang to Licheng. In fact, on the way, Tianyangsheng and others had already interrogated the mastermind behind the scenes. He Yongqiang also knew that even if he told the truth, he would not survive, so he simply used this as a condition to exchange his wife and children. Brother, he refused to tell the mastermind behind the scenes. Tianyangsheng pushed He Yongqiang angrily. If it weren't for the big boss Li Qing, they would have been killed by such a person. Li Qing clapped his hands lightly, and Zhang Dongzia walked in with the crying woman and child. Yongqiang, the woman shouted loudly when she saw He Yongqiang. He Yongqiang also looked at his wife and children with excitement. This boss, don't let my wife and children suffer. Let my wife and children go, and I will tell the mastermind behind the scenes. He Yongqiang didn't know who the person in front of him was, but looking at Tianyangsheng's respectful attitude towards him, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Li Qing sat in the boss chair and looked at the bruised man in front of him. Haha, I know the mastermind behind the scenes even if you don't tell me. He Yongqiang shook his head. He didn't believe that the big boss in front of him knew. If he knew, why did he arrest him? Superintendent Zhang Wenyao of the Special Operations Group of the Hong Kong Police Force. When He Yongqiang heard Zhang Wenyao's name, he was so surprised that his mouth couldn't close. Tianyangsheng saw He Yongqiang's expression and understood that what his elder brother Li Qing said was true. Since he knew the mastermind behind the scenes, what was the point of arresting He Yongqiang himself? Brother. Li Qing stood up and patted Tianyangsheng on the shoulder, asking him to calm down. How did you know? He Yongqiang blurted out, and then as if he realized something, his whole spirit and energy withered. With no more cards, he looked at his wife and children who were still sobbing in despair. Li Qing looked at He Yongqiang who was slumped on the ground. Do you want your wife and children to continue living? His words rekindled the hope of life in He Yongqiang's eyes. Here, call Zhang Wenyao and tell him that Tianyangsheng is back. Li Qing handed the phone to He Yongqiang. Although He Yongqiang didn't know what Li Qing was going to do, he had no choice now. Picking up the phone, He Yongqiang dialed Zhang Wenyao's number. After 2 rings, the other party picked up the phone. Why are you calling me at this time? The situation is too tense. I will give you your share after a while. Are they back? Ah. Tianyangsheng is back. The other party fell silent, as if listening carefully to the voice on this side, and then the phone rang with a busy tone. Li Qing raised the corner of his mouth. Yangsheng, find a brother to keep an eye on Zhang Wenyao. Tianyangsheng nodded and immediately ordered his younger brother to keep an eye on him. You said I did it, let my wife and children go, He Yongqiang begged. Don't worry, I won't kill them if I say I won't kill them. Li Qing thought for a while and said, I need you to do one thing for me. After this is done, I will let your wife and children go. Li Qing whispered in He Yongqiang's ear for a while. He Yongqiang glanced at Li Qing and nodded gently. Take him away, don't kill him for the time being, it will work. Li Qing said to Tianyangsheng. Tian Yangshen nodded and walked out with He Yongqiang. Looking at He Yongqiang's back, Li Qing lit a cigarette and took a deep puff. Dongziu, give the order to cut off the circuits around the Kowloon police station before 9 o'clock tomorrow night. Zhang Dongziu heard the words and quickly responded to arrange the order of his elder brother. At this time, Zhang Wenyao was confused. He couldn't rob the thieves. Now Tian Yangsheng and others must be desperate for revenge. No, I have to leave quickly. Zhang Wenyao gritted his teeth and made a decision in his heart. Tian Yangsheng and his men are all terrorists who have killed countless people. Even if he hides in the police station all day, he may not be safe. Fortunately, when he was planning to rob the money truck, he had already sent his wife and women to Canada. He immediately booked a flight to Canada and prepared to leave Hong Kong after getting the money tomorrow night. As soon as he put down the phone, the door of his office was knocked. Zhang Wenyao immediately took out the gun from the drawer and asked cautiously, "Who?" "Wenyao, I'm Luo Paiquan." Only after hearing Luo Paiquan's voice did he breathe a sigh of relief and put the gun back into the drawer. Cleared his throat, "Come in." "Why aren't you leaving so late?" Luo Paiquan asked curiously. He just saw the light in Zhang Wenyao's room was on and came in curiously to ask. "You are the same? The money transport case is indeed complicated. I heard that Tian Yangsheng and his gang are very likely to be back." Zhang Wenyao's eyes flickered, and he blurted out. "Really, where is it?" Luo Paiquan asked in surprise. "I don't know, I just heard it." He planned to take the money and leave tomorrow, and make some trouble for Tian Yangsheng and others, but he really didn't know Tian Yangsheng's address. Luo Paiquan touched his chin and thought for a while, "I'll tell the guys to find out the news first. After all, it was just a rumor, and it's better to confirm the news." "Take care," Zhang Wenyao's voice came from behind Luo Paiquan. "You are crazy, what's the danger? Why should I take care of myself?" Luo Paiquan heard the words and laughed and scolded. "Ha ha, no, I just said it casually." Zhang Wenyao also laughed with his old friend. The next evening, the police station received a notice from Hong Kong Electric that the circuit was under emergency maintenance and the emergency power supply of the police station needed to be started at night. "Hey, open the door." The electronic door bar could not be automatically lifted due to the power outage. The guard saw that it was a police car and thought that the colleagues who were out of the team had returned. He didn't pay much attention and lifted the gate to let them pass. The group drove to the parking lot. "Is that the car that Brother Qing said?" Tian Yangzi pointed to the dilapidated car in the corner of the parking lot and said to his eldest brother Tian Yangsheng. Tian Yangsheng took off his sunglasses and took a look, then nodded, "It seems so." Several people got out of the car and pushed He Yongqiang to the front of the car. Click. Tian Yangzi gently pried open the trunk of the car, and several black travel bags came into view. Tian Yangsheng unzipped one of them and saw that it was full of US dollars. He picked up a bag and took a look. Tian Yangsheng curled his lips, "Brother, you are really well informed. I'm afraid no one would have thought that the stolen money would be hidden in the police station." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 119. Get the counterfeit money from the car. Tian Yangsheng said to Tian Yanjin, Tian Yangzi, and others behind him. It turned out that the police car he drove contained counterfeit money that Li Qing had prepared for them in advance to use it to steal money. Taking advantage of the police station's power outage and insufficient emergency power supply and lighting, several people easily paid back the money. As for Tian Yangsheng, he quietly came to Zhang Wenyao's office with He Yongqiang. In the office, Zhang Wenyao had already put away everything that needed to be put away. He was sitting on a chair, taking photos and reminiscing about the past. One wrong step, Every wrong step, Zhang Wenyao sighed. Haha, your biggest mistake was betraying our brothers. The office door was suddenly pushed open. Tian Yangsheng and He Yongqiang walked in. Is it you? Zhang Wenyao looked at Tian Yangsheng and He Yongqiang, and his expression changed. I was about to draw my gun, but it was too late. The pistol with the silencer in Tian Yangsheng's hand was already pressed against his head. Zhang Wenyao raised his hands. It's my fault, but I didn't want to betray you. Tian Yangsheng looked at him coldly and said nothing. I just asked you to rob. You killed so many police officers. What do you want me to do? Brother. Tian Yangsheng smiled disdainfully and tightened the gun in his hand. No, no, everyone is here for money. Let me tell you where the money is. I'll give you my share too. Tian Yangsheng took off his police hat and put it on Zhang Wenyao's head, then kicked him sideways in the chest and abdomen. Zhang Wenyao fell to the ground instantly. Seeing Zhang Wenyao lying on the ground, Tian Yangsheng took out the handkerchief in his pocket and wiped the fingerprints on the gun before handing it to He Yongqiang. It turns out that all of this was planned by Li Qing and asked him to kill Zhang Wenyao himself. This was the condition for agreeing not to kill his wife and children. He Yongqiang took the gun in his hand and glanced at Tian Yangsheng. If you don't kill him, your wife and children will die. Seeing He Yongqiang's hesitation, Tian Yangsheng said softly. He Yongqiang gritted his teeth and fired all his bullets at Zhang Wenyao, who was lying on the ground. The dead Zhang Wenyao had a look of horror and surprise on his face. Before he died, he didn't believe that the other party actually killed him without getting the money. Tian Yangsheng chuckled, turned, and walked out of the office. He Yongqiang slumped in a chair, waiting for the police to arrive. Brother, it's ready. Tian Yangzi said softly when he saw Tian Yangsheng walking downstairs. Tian Yangsheng nodded, let's go. Before leaving, Zhang Wenyao left a time bomb in the car where he kept the money. The group got into the police car and began to drive away from the police station. Just passed by a police car. Inside the police car. Hey, our police station got a new car. Zhang Chongbang asked the waiter next to him in confusion. He had never seen the make of this police car before. Master, don't be ridiculous, there are no new cars, but second-hand cars are possible. When Zhang Chongbang heard the waiter's complaint, he smiled and shook his head. Maybe he was overthinking it. Boom! The huge explosion shattered all the windows of the police station. Zhang Chongbang and others were also frightened and shrank their heads. What's going on? Zhang Wenyao's car had also been blown to pieces, and of course the $100 million in counterfeit banknotes. Even if the police find it, they can only find the broken dollar bills, making it even harder to identify the authenticity. Zhang Chongbang's face condensed, and he felt something was wrong. Chase, catch up with the police car just now. Upon hearing this, the man quickly turned around and chased the police car in the direction it had just been traveling. Brother, there is a policeman chasing you. Tian Yangzi looked in the rearview mirror and said to Tian Yangsheng. Tian Yangsheng looked at a police car chasing him dozens of meters away, opened the car window, and took a shot with the AK in his hand. Zhang Chongbang and others also opened their car windows to fight back. In fact, shooting in a speeding car is nothing like in the movie. It is difficult to hit anyone. It is completely random shooting and depends on fate. The two sides shot each other, but apart from hitting the air and hitting the car body, it had no effect at all. The two police cars chased on the road. After an unknown period of time, the place where Tian Yangsheng and others were traveling became increasingly remote. My lord, something is wrong. It's getting more and more remote. Zhang Chongbang frowned, turn around and go back. He also felt something was wrong. There was still traffic on the road just now. Since turning into this road, he hadn't seen a single car. The man quickly turned around after hearing this, but it was too late. A large truck appeared out of nowhere from behind and hit the rear of the police car hard, until the police car crashed into a ditch on the side of the road. Zhang Chongbang and others stumbled out of the police car and carefully climbed onto the road with guns in hand. Suddenly my eyes were dazzled by the car's high beam. Li Qing smiled lightly and looked at Zhang Chongbang and others who stretched out their arms to block their eyes. This is really a narrow road for enemies. It was originally arranged for the police who chased them out, but I didn't expect to meet an old friend. Li Qing, Zhang Chongbang said sharply. Zhang Chongbang's eyes adjusted to the bright light and he could see the person in front of him clearly. Haha, what a coincidence, Sir Zhang. I originally wanted to leave you to AO, but I didn't expect it. Things are unpredictable. Looking at the embarrassed Zhang Chongbang in front of him, Li Qing joked. You bastard, it's because of people like you that the world is so disordered. Looking coldly at the incompetent and furious Zhang Chongbang, Li Qing said coldly, kill him. Yanbian F3 bared his big yellow teeth and raised his gun. Bang, bang, bang until the magazine was empty. Then a special scavenger brother carried several bodies into the truck. The police car in the ditch was also pulled by the tractor and drove to the garbage recycling station in the distance. Brother, look. Tian Yangsheng opened the trunk, unzipped it and pointed at the $dollars in the bag. Li Qing picked it up and flipped it, then threw it into the bag. Take half of these $dollars. Tian Yangsheng and others were stunned by Li Qing's words. Is there a big brother in the club who doesn't like money in this world? Originally, Tian Yangsheng meant to give it all to Li Qing. After all, Li Qing saved them. But his big brother actually gave him and others $50 million. You know, the purchasing power of $50 million is terrifyingly high. The 7 brothers and sisters were moved by Li Qing's operation, and their loyalty values rose rapidly. The remaining $50 million will still be kept by you. You will need to go to Ukraine in a while. Li Qing had already made arrangements for Tian Yangsheng and others. First, Tian Yangsheng and others' current goals are too big to stay in Hong Kong. Second, he needs to solve the problem of the supply of arms. Tian Yangsheng and others are all from the Soviet Union and are familiar with it. He plans to let them open arms channels. Otherwise, it is too inconvenient to rely on South Korea for smuggling, and there are black-hearted middlemen who make a profit from the price difference. Tian Yangsheng and others were even more moved by hearing this, facing Li Qing's unconditional trust. Tian Yangsheng and others' loyalty value 100% instantly achieved. Brother, don't worry, many of our former comrades are in Ukraine, and even our former superiors are in Ukraine. Tian Yangsheng nodded solemnly, and secretly made up his mind that no matter what Li Qing's task was, he must complete it. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 120. Too many policemen died at the hands of Tian Yangsheng and others, and Li Qing couldn't hold back. 2 nights later, he sent Tian Yangsheng and his brothers to sneak across the Hejiang River, and then flew directly to Ukraine from Hejiang. Now Li Qing's power has blossomed in many places, and he has his own base in Hong Kong, Hejiang, and South Korea. The temporarily stable New World began to further consolidate its territory, but now Li Qing does not plan to expand his territory in Hong Kong. Instead, he set his sights on finance. New World, Li Qing's office. Brother, they are really evil. Zhang Qiandan took the information that the big boss Li Qing asked him to collect. It turned out that as early as last week, Li Qing had asked Zhang Qiandan to collect information on underground banks in Hong Kong, especially underground banks that laundered money. Li Qing looked at several larger money laundering companies in the information and smiled. It seems that we have to be middlemen and make a profit from the price difference. The huge profits from money laundering are simply amazing. In the last life, Li Qing heard a story from his colleagues. Someone won a lottery of 2 million, and it was immediately taken away by someone for 3 million, and it was paid in seconds. If you think about it carefully, the twists and turns here are obviously not something that ordinary people can understand. What is the origin of this Zhongqing society? Li Qing pointed to a familiar name and asked. John Candon took a look and frowned. Brother, this Zhongqing society is a medium-sized society in Kowloon. Although its strength is average, it is involved with foreign forces such as the American Skull and Bones Party, the Italian Mafia, and the Colombian drug lords. He pondered for a moment and then said, not only foreign forces, but even the major gangs in Hong Kong are using it to launder money, and the largest of them is Xinji. After hearing this, Li Qing raised his eyebrows. It's not big, and the relationships involved are quite complicated. It's mainly because we in New World have our own gambling industry, otherwise we have to use this kind of gang to launder money. After all, it's a napkin that can be thrown away at will, and everyone likes to use it. John Candon scratched his head and told the truth. Indeed, New World doesn't use this kind of chamber pot to launder money at all. By the way, Big Brother, the leader of Zhongqing society seems to be called Ding Xiaoxi, which is also a very strange name. Li Qing's eyelashes trembled slightly when he heard this. Ding Xiaoxi. Then he picked up the information about Zhongqing society on the table and read it carefully. The four brothers of the Ding family, the eldest brother Ding Xiaoxi is the leader of Zhongqing society, the second brother Ding Yuxi is responsible for fighting and killing, the third brother Ding Wangzi, lawyer, is responsible for the society's legal affairs, and the fourth brother Ding Lixi, doctor, is responsible for the society's flower business. Looking at the familiar names, Li Qing smiled. So it's these crabs. John Candon, who was sitting opposite, looked at his eldest brother's smile and shrank his neck. It seems that someone is going to be unlucky again. Candon, let me keep an eye on these crabs in Zhongqing society. These guys are very fat. Li Qing was so happy that his mouth could hardly close. Zhongqing society is involved in many forces and societies, but it can't resist this piece of fat meat. John Candon nodded quickly and went out to arrange the things that the boss told him. Li Qing just wanted to have some quiet time. Hong Sheng has been pestering him these days, making him a little tired. Brother, I heard that Dahu has new stuff. Let's go and take a look. Crow ran in excitedly. Didn't I just open a silver party for you a few days ago? Li Qing looked at Crow and rolled his eyes. Hey, brother, you also said it was a few days ago. Crow smiled obscenely. Li Qing looked at Crow in shock. Could it be that you want to open it every day? It's not that he can't afford it, he's afraid that Crow, his little brother, will die young. Just take me to see it. Why don't you go by yourself? Crow felt a little wronged because Dahu had put him on the blacklist, making the film company, any woman, stay away from him. Forget it, it's a good opportunity to go and see the business over there. Li Qing looked at Crow's uncomfortable expression and reluctantly said it. Alas, who told him to love his little brother so much? He is so kind. The two got in the car and drove towards the film company. Halfway through, they were blocked by people holding banners and marching. Anxiously, Crow stuck his head out of the car window and yelled, "Hey, make way, there's something urgent." Li Qing also looked out of the car window curiously, and saw two women and one man holding a banner with black letters on a white background, which read "The Mafia persecutes loyal people. Lawlessness." The man shouted slogans with a loudspeaker, and the people around were very angry and followed behind. Hey, I don't know which society has discredited our mafia and persecuted loyal people. Crow listened for a while and said with indignation on his face. The younger brother driving next to him couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he heard what Crow said. Li Qing looked at the three familiar faces. Peaches, ripe. Brother, what did you say? Crow looked at the boss and asked in confusion. Peaches are ripe. Get lost. Dongziu, arrange it, call a few tabloid reporters, Report this matter, Li Qing said after thinking for a moment. Brother, Zhang Dongzhou is dating. Crow is very unhappy now. In the bosses Dongzhou and humble every day, his position in his heart is getting lower and lower. Hi, you go. Also, send someone to keep an eye on the three people, don't disturb them, Li Qing thought for a while and said. The younger brother who was driving nodded, took out his phone and started to contact Crow. Watching the three people slowly walk past the car, Li Qing fell into deep thought. Fang Zanbo, Fang Ting, stock market. Li Qing's eyes were solemn, things were becoming more and more interesting. With Li Qing's instigation, the Fang family's experience attracted more and more sympathy from people, and the Hong Kong government was forced to review Ding Hai in prison. Zhongqing Society. Ding Xiaohe sat on the sofa, Ding Yuhei kept walking back and forth, and the other two crabs kept sighing. Brother, you should make an idea. Ding Yuhei spread his hands and looked at Ding Xiaohe with an expressionless face. Yes, brother, what should we do? The three brothers have always followed Ding Xiaohe's lead. Ding Xiaohe shook his head and said nothing. What do you mean by shaking your head? That's our dad. Ding Xiaoxi also stood up at this time. There's really no way this time. Do you think that this matter is only the Hong Kong government? There are black hands behind the scenes that we don't know about that are fueling the fire. Then he shouted loudly, I went to ask several big bosses of the society. The Fang family has been unable to suppress this matter. What does this mean? You don't understand. The remaining three people were silent. They have been in the society for so long, of course they know that there may be people behind them that they can't afford to offend. Then what should we do? What should we do? Since the Fang family wants our father to die, the entire Fang family will go down to be buried with him. Ding Xiaoxi's eyes flashed with a sinister look.